Hello and welcome into the ETSN.fm podcast. For the last time in the 2018 high school football season, I'm Clint Buckley, and I'm joined as always by Chandler Vessels. Chandler, we got 4 teams in Arlington playing for state titles this week, which equals the amount of teams we had last year. So congratulations is in order to Newton, Malakoff, Pleasant Grove, and Longview. So congrats to those teams, and we can't wait to see you guys out at AT&T Stadium in Arlington this week, starting tomorrow. Well, Chandler, first things first, the Newton Eagles, they're back at it. They're there to defend their state title from last year. They have a tough opponent this week in Canadian. That game takes place at 3 o'clock in the 3A Division II state championship game. What are you looking forward to the most out of this one?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one just because, I mean we saw Newton struggle for the first time all playoffs last week. They had to come away with a touchdown with 12 seconds left to pull that win out. But as with most of these games, I figure it's gonna be a pretty competitive game. I still like Newton to win this game just based on having been there last year, and then the caliber of players that they got. But looking at Canadian, they're a team that is pretty balanced on offense, about 200 yards passing and a little under 200 rushing. So it's almost even, really. They've got a quarterback in Kaysen Cavalier who's passed for 3,000 yards, over 40 touchdowns, and is getting close to 1,000 yards rushing this season. He might pass it in this game. He's at 937 right now. But they've got a couple good. He's got a couple good receivers that he likes to throw to, Garrison McCook and Trent Evans that Newton's really going to have to lock down on. And I don't believe Tamazier Brown's going to be playing in this game, so that could be a matchup to watch there. Just seeing with the loss, they did go without him for about 6 games this season and seemed to do just fine. But against players like this, his loss might be a little bit more noticeable. But I mean, they've got Josh Foster back there who also plays quarterback, who can hold things down on defense. As far as offensively, I mean, we've been talking about Newton's offense all year, and the guy is Darwin Barlow. Even last week, whenever he had his lowest yardage total, it was still 113 yards. That's the lowest he's rushed for in a game this season. So that's pretty impressive. I expect him, and I don't expect him to have another lowest total game. I expect him to bounce back from a 113 yard game. But I expect him to have another great game, and I'm looking forward to this one. But I would pick Newton to get the back-to-back. Yeah,
Canadians, they're a proud program. They've been here several times in the past. They've won a state title recently. They knocked out Gunner last week in the semifinals, which is who Newton played last year in the state championship game.
Yeah.
So obviously, Canadian is an opponent that Newton should respect, and I think does respect going into this game. It should be a lot of fun, and I think Newton got its wake-up call last week against East Bernard. I mean, because neither one of us thought, and quite frankly, probably none of the players thought that they were going to be challenged in that game last week. But the game was tied going down the stretch.
Yeah.
And they got that touchdown with like you said, 12 seconds left. Darwin Barlow was able to punch it across the goal line for the touchdown. I think that might have been a wake-up call for this Newton team, and I wouldn't expect them to struggle as much this week as they did last week. But Canadian's a good opponent, so they're going to have a lot to say about that. So looking forward to that one. Newton and Canadian for the 3A Division II Championship. That's at 3 o'clock Thursday at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, followed by the 3A Division I Championship game featuring Malakoff and Grandview, which is a rematch of their regular season game from earlier this year.
Yeah. Malakoff lost that one 28-7 during the regular season, but that was back in September. Both these teams are probably a lot different now, especially Malakoff on offense. In that game, Malakoff lost R.J. Carr, who is now back. He came back during the playoffs. And that was also Kiwi Rose's, their now starting running back. That was his first game. He had to take over for Carr. First game in a major role like that.
Right.
I expect them to score more than 7 points this time just because their offense is going to be a little bit more relaxed. Hopefully they won't have any more injuries this game. So I expect it to be a little bit tighter than that first matchup, but the matchup I'm really looking forward to out of this one is actually that backfield going up against Grandview's defensive line and their rushing defense. Just because those two backs, Kiwi Rose and R.J. Carr, I mean, Kiwi Rose is over 1,000 yards already. R.J. Carr is, I don't know how many games, 5 or 6 games he's played in, but he's already got 600 yards. So they'll be splitting carries back there, and but Grandview's defensive line, I wasn't able to track down any season stats, but last week there were 3 different guys with sacks. They've got 3 different guys at least 6'2" or taller, a couple 300-pound guys. Mm-hmm. They're pretty big on the defensive line. So I think that defensive line going up against the offensive line of Malkoff is going to be the matchup to watch in this one. And just seeing how that Malkoff offense, which has really been pretty potent these playoffs and all season long, responds, especially after that first performance. They didn't have a great performance against Grandview. So I'm really looking forward to this one too.
Yeah, I think that was week 2, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I think week 2 or 3.
Yeah. And the quarterback Darian Peace, he's a sophomore. Yeah. And that was like his second or third career game at quarterback too. Yeah. And he's made some big strides since then. He's I think over 2,000 yards passing now for the season. Mm-hmm. Has a really good touchdown to interceptions ratio, and is capable of running the ball as well out of the backfield. So it'll be interesting to see how much Malkoff has grown from that week, and Grandview has as well. We don't want to discount that fact. I mean, Grandview, all these teams have gotten better since early part of the season. Otherwise, they wouldn't be playing in a state championship game. But yeah, looking forward to that. Malkoff and Grandview. It should be a lot of fun. The thing I'm looking forward to the most, I think, is the Grandview Zebra inflatable.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if you've seen pictures of it, but it's impressive, and you'll get to see it up close and personal if you'd like Thursday if you want to get down on the field and watch that thing in action. It's pretty impressive. So Malkoff and Grandview finishing out Thursday night's action at AT&T Stadium for the 3A Division I title. That's at 7 o'clock. Moving on to Friday, it's the Class 4A Division II Championship at 11 a.m. Pleasant Grove Hawks going for back-to-back titles. They have a big test ahead of them against the Gobblers of Cuero, another one of the great mascots in the state of Texas.
So many,
good ones. and that's right up there, the Cuero Gobblers. And Cuero is no joke. I mean, they're 14-1. They have a couple of really, really solid athletes, and you got to start with Jordan Whittington, their senior, who's committed to Texas. He's got almost 1,000 yards receiving. He's over 500 yards rushing, and he also has 5 interceptions on defense. So he's kind of the do-everything guy for Cuero. Jordan Whittington's a fantastic player, one of the top players in the state, maybe a 4 or 5-star caliber kid. So he's going to have a big impact in this game as well. But Cuero has lots of different playmakers. They have 2 rushers who are both over 1,400 yards. And that's Chance Albrecht and Kieran Grant. Kieran Grant, who's at 1,400 yards, has committed to Army. And between them, they have almost 3,000 yards just between the two of those guys with 55 touchdowns. Wow. And they also have a 2,000-yard passer. So this is a Cuero offense that is very potent, very explosive. They average over 50 points per game, and they're very balanced. So it's going to be a very, very big test for that Pleasant Grove defense this week, I feel like, because Cuero can beat you so many different ways. And they're going to have the best player on the field, I feel like, in Jordan Whittington. He could be the X factor, the big difference in that game for Cuero. On the other side, look, Pleasant Grove is experienced. I mean, they did lose a ton of players from last year's state championship team, but the players they did bring back, they've been great all season long. You're talking about Bruce Garrett, their junior running back, who's closing in on 1,800 yards rushing this season. Ben Harmon, the quarterback who was thrown into the fire as a sophomore last year and was able to win a state title. What he's been able to do in year 2 has been fantastic. I mean, he's up close to 2,000 yards passing himself with 30 touchdowns and only 5 interceptions. And he's run the ball a lot more this year than he did last year. He's up close to 400 yards rushing, and he's got 10 touchdowns on the ground. So, and then you throw in James Wiggins, another 1,000-yard rusher for Pleasant Grove. I know they had 3 of those last year. They have 2 this year, but Ben Harmon has thrown the ball just a little bit more than he did last year, and Jackson Cobb has really reaped the benefits. 25 catches for 558 yards and 8 touchdowns. He's been the go-to guy for Ben Harmon all season long at receiver. Had a big game last week against Iowa Park. 3 catches, 110 yards, and a couple of touchdowns that both I think were at least 45 yards in distance, both of them. So it's a big play offense. I mean, you hear all the time about the wing tee and how they like to grind out the clock and get 3 or 4 yards at a time, but Pleasant Grove is explosive. Their running backs are capable of busting in on every play, and then the big plays they have in the passing game with Ben Harmon and Jackson Cobb, and another receiver that's come on for them is Brett Walker. So this is a very complete Pleasant Grove offense, and I think the big key in this one is going to be Pleasant Grove's run offense against Cuero's defensive front. If Pleasant Grove is able to have success, which they have for most of the season running the football, I think Pleasant Grove is in line to have a very big day on Friday, and I think they can win the state championship for a second year in a row. But if they're unable to find success on the ground, if they're able to be contained more than they're used to, I think this is a game that Cuero can win. I think the big key is going to be how well Pleasant Grove is able to run the ball. If they run the ball like they have all season long, I don't see any problem for them. But there could be some complications if they're in some third and long situations where they're going to have to be forced to throw. I mean, Ben Harmon's done a great job, but a lot of his big completions have come off the play action, and on second and third and short. Where it's the whole playbook is open. So winning on first and second down on offense is going to be key for Pleasant Grove. So and then the Saturday, we got a Saturday game finally. A 6A team is in the state championship game from East Texas. Congratulations to Longview, back in the title game for the first time since 2009. It's been 81 years since the Longview Lobos have won a state championship, 1937. So needless to say, the city of Longview is long overdue for a state championship. And they have a great shot at it this year. They're going to play Beaumont Westbrook at 3 p.m. Saturday for the 6A Division II state championship. These two teams are very familiar with one another. They have met in the first round of the playoffs in each of the last two seasons. And they've split those games. Westbrook won in 2016 and the Longview won last year. So these two teams are very familiar with one another. And you talk about Westbrook, and they're extremely explosive on offense. We talk about Longview's offense, and Westbrook is unbelievable as well. I mean, they have a quarterback, Laravian Elia, who's just been money all season long. I mean, he's passed for over 2,100 yards and 22 touchdowns. He's run for almost 800 yards and 6 touchdowns. Really the true dual threat guy for them at quarterback, and he's been doing it for a couple of years now. But they also have a great running back in Robert McGrew Jr., who's almost at 2,000 yards on the season, and he's rushed for 33 touchdowns. So this is a very, very potent 1-2 combination in the backfield between Elia, the quarterback, and then McGrew, the running back. And then they have got some big players at receiver. Thaddeus Johnson is up over 1,100 yards receiving. He's got 11 touchdown catches. And Deontay Thompson, who's committed to North Texas. He has 50 catches, 839 yards, and 10 touchdowns. So this is a Westbrook offense that's no stranger to putting up points and putting up yards. They're averaging almost 45 points per game, 460 yards per game as well. They're just a very loaded team on offense and very speedy. And it's going to be a key to see which team is faster, because Longview has had the speed advantage, I feel like, in every single one of their games in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case on Saturday against Westbrook, because they have some tremendous athletes themselves. So it's going to be key to I think turnovers are going to be a big key in this game, because I think both offenses are very potent and a very. I think this has the potential to be a high scoring game. Westbrook's defense is allowing about 25 points per game. Longview's they allowed 42 last week to Amarillo Tascosa. So there are concerns, I think, for both teams on the defensive side of the ball, and both offenses are just loaded. So I think this could be a very high scoring game, and I think turnovers could be a very big key, because if the defenses aren't going to stop you and force 3 and outs and force punts, the stops are going to come with turnovers. And I think whichever team protects the ball the best is going to have the best chance to come out on top with a victory. Longview, look, they're great on offense. I mean, they're averaging 50 points per game, about 500 yards as well. They're balanced, 276 average on the ground, 220 passing. Haynes King has had a couple of off weeks back to back and passing the ball. Both weeks kept under 100 yards through the air. So it will be interesting to see what kind of game plan Longview has coming out. I mean, they haven't needed the big games from Haynes King, obviously, the last 2 weeks to win. They've been relying a lot on their 2 running backs, Jesse Anderson and Keelan Williams, to get the job done, and they've done a great job all season long, by the way. But I think for Longview to come out on top, they're going to have a big game from Haynes King at quarterback. They're not going to be able to just rely on the run to get the job done. I think they're going to have to make some big plays through the air with Haynes King and Camden Perry and company. So I think Longview needs to protect the football, and they need to make some big plays through the air if they want to come out on top and win their first state championship since 1937. It's hard to believe. Yeah. Longview is as good as they've been in their program's history. Hasn't won one in 81 years. So we could be seeing history Saturday, and that would be fun to close out our 2018 high school football season. So those are the games, 4 games going on this week at AT&T Stadium in Arlington. We've got Malakoff, we've got Newton, we've got Pleasant Grove, we've got Longview. Should be a tremendous weekend, and we encourage all of y'all to make the trip out to Arlington if you can. It's a trip that you'll never forget. It's great. I think one ticket gets you into all 3 games, all 3 days. So just stay for the other games as well. It should be a great atmosphere at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, and we'll be there. So if you see us and say hi, we'll say hi back. We don't bite. We'd love to meet y'all. And but before we get out of here, we want to give a shout out to our offensive and defensive players of the week. And for the first time all year, I believe they're both from the same school. Longview running back Jesse Anderson is our offensive player of the week. He carried 13 times for 112 yards and 3 touchdowns in their win over Tascosa last week. And then on the defensive side of the ball, what a performance from Jeffaniah Lester.
Yeah, 26 tackles, 2 for loss. I mean, it's hard to beat that many tackles. It's hard for anybody to top that, so he definitely deserved it this week.
Yeah, and I think he's now the all-time leading tackler in Longview school history. So congratulations to Mr. Lister and to Jesse Anderson, our offensive and defensive players of the week. Well, that's going to do it for this year on the podcast. I know I speak for Chandler when I say that we appreciate you guys for tuning in every week as we preview the best in East Texas each season each week during the football season. If you have any questions or comments, you can always leave them in the comment section below, or you can hit us up on Twitter. I'm at Clint Buckley. He's at Chandler Vessels. Be sure to follow us along on Twitter for all the updates this week from all the action. And yeah, just everyone have a great weekend and enjoy a happy and safe holiday season. And we will talk to you all again next year.